The following program is a production of Truth for the World.
Ye servants of God, your Master proclaim, and publish abroad His wonderful name, the name all victorious of Jesus extol. His kingdom is glorious, He rules over all.
We are talking for the next few minutes about what are you working for? I don't mean to say that as if to say, why are you working? What I mean is, what are you working for? What's your purpose? What's your end goal? What are you striving for? We're going to try and look at that in two different aspects. What are you working for as a congregation? And what are you working for individually? We'll start off with, what are you working for as a congregation? Another question to throw out is, where are you going? Or where are we going? I was in a business meeting once in an organization that I worked for. That organization will remain nameless. But it was basically a business meeting. And there was a time, I guess, for comments or questions. And I basically said something to the degree of, I have a question. Where are we going? And that's what I asked. Everyone was doing their work. The person in this department was doing their work. The person in that department was doing their work. It wasn't that people weren't working. But I said, where are we going? I don't know where this organization is headed. I don't know what our goals are. What do we want to accomplish? Or are we just satisfied everybody sitting in their own office doing their own work? Maybe that's fine for a lot of people, but I figured we should be headed in some direction. We should be going somewhere. We should be trying to accomplish something. The work we were doing was important, but the question was, what more could we be doing? What more could we do? And of course, we ask this question in the aspect of a congregation. I ask it respectfully, where are we going as a congregation? Can we answer that question? Once again, respectfully, if we can't answer that question, what else can we conclude other than we don't know where we're going? Look at Luke chapter 19, verses 20 through 27. You know the parable of the talents. Another came, saying, Lord, behold, here is thy pound, which I have kept laid up in a napkin. For I feared thee, because thou art an austere man. Thou takest up that thou layest not down, and reapest that thou didst not sow. And he saith unto him, Out of thine own mouth will I judge thee, thou wicked servant. Thou knewest that I was an austere man, taking up that I laid not down, and reaping that I did not sow. Wherefore then gavest not thou my money into the bank, that at my coming I might have required mine own with usury? And he said unto them that stood by, Take from him the pound, and give it to him that hath 10 pounds. And they said unto him, Lord, he hath 10 pounds. For I say unto you that unto every one which hath shall be given, and from him that hath not, even that he hath shall be taken away from him. But those mine enemies which would not that I should reign over them, bring hither and slay them before me. We often say that the 1 talent man or the 1 pound man was not condemned because he had 1 talent, and that's true. But we need to think about, what did he really have? If he's not condemned because he only had 1 talent, why was he condemned? He gave back to the master that which the master had given to him. He didn't really lose anything, did he? He gave back to the master that which the master had given to him. But the master is not pleased at that. Because why? Because obviously the purpose is, I gave this to you in order that you do something with it, and you move forward and you progress with it. You see what I mean? The man ended with the exact same amount that he started with. In other words, we might say all he did was tread water. He didn't go anywhere. He didn't progress. He didn't achieve anything. All he did is give his money back to his master, and probably gave it back to him dirtier than he had it before, because he went and shoved it in the ground. At least in one of the versions of the parables. Do you see what I mean? Treading water. Well, what's it have to do with this? This is a spiritual application to Judgment Day. This is being spoken to us through inspiration of the Holy Spirit to let us know just returning back to God what He gave to you won't cut it. Just treading water won't cut it. You should be going somewhere. You should be making progress, and you should be bringing forth fruit for the Master. See, that's what it's really about. The Master put His money in you. Now, if you know as well as I do, if I go to the bank and I give them my money, I expect them to do something with it, and I expect them to give me some interest. I mean, I'm basically giving them my money. I expect something for it. Usually I'm buying something. I give somebody something, they give me groceries, it's a good deal. But spiritually speaking, God gives us something. Why? Because He expects something in return. Just giving God back what He gave us is not going to cut it. As a congregation, what has God blessed us with, and what are we doing with it? Because if we're not bearing fruit, if we're not increasing, if we're not accomplishing things, we're just treading water. Can churches tread water? Well, I think it's possible for any individual or any congregation to tread water. How do churches tread water? Well, just like the one-talent man, they're satisfied with what God has given them, and they don't want anything more. We might say, you ever heard the term status quo? I don't know if it's Latin or what, but it basically means the present condition or the way things are now. When congregations are satisfied with the status quo, the way things are now, and say, that's good enough, what's wrong with this? Then they're treading water. I mean, isn't that what the man treading water is doing? He's saying, I'm fine right here. I don't want to go anywhere. I don't need to go anywhere. I'm fine right here. I may have to work and work hard to stay here, but I'm going to stay right here. It's a dangerous trap to get into, to be satisfied with the status quo. I don't have a fancy quote to share with you, with Shakespeare's name underneath or anything like that. But I do remember a friend of mine in high school told me something along the lines of, this pithy saying, and they basically said, when we become satisfied with the status quo, we failed. When we've become satisfied with ourselves, we failed. Well, what does that idea say? We should always be growing. We should always be improving. We should always be striving to do more. And let's think about it. For whom are we doing this? Jesus. Does Jesus deserve the best? And does Jesus expect the best? Of course, the answer is yes. And therefore, when we come before Him on the day of judgment, just giving back to God what He gave us won't cut it. I think churches can fall into the trap of treading water through what I'm going to call the triple L syndrome. The triple L syndrome. We want three things that start with L. We want the lights kept on. As long as the building is taken care of, the bills are paid, and the lights are on, we're happy. We want to make sure that the Lord's Supper is prepared and taken, because we have to do that, right? We have to do that. And as long as someone is slated to give a lesson, as long as the lights are on, the Lord's Supper is taken, and somebody gave a lesson, I think it's possible for a lot of congregations to fall into the trap of, we did our job, check our box, and let's go home. Have you ever experienced that? I may not have experienced it quite this way, but I've felt that idea. I've been in a men's meeting where someone said, as long as I don't have to give the lesson. I've been in men's meetings where 90+% of the time is talking about what to do in the building and fixing the building. And as soon as I bring up an evangelism idea, it gets shot right down. You're not worried about church growth. You're not worried about evangelism. You're not worried about bringing forth fruits to the master. But you want to sit here and talk about whether or not to drywall this place or put up wallpaper. We'll sit and talk about that for hours. I'm just throwing out little tidbits and anecdotes that may exemplify some of the things that we're talking about, focusing on just keeping the status quo. Or not remembering what the work of the church is. Evangelism, edification, and benevolence. The work of the church is not to have a building. It's great to have a building. It's incredibly nice to have a building with air conditioning. But if that's all we work on, if coming in and taking the Lord's Supper is satisfactory to us, as long as someone slated the lesson and we check that off, are we satisfied and we go home and we forget about it? If so, we may have fallen into the triple L syndrome trap and we just tread in water. Because we're satisfied with keeping the lights on, the Lord's Supper prepared, and somebody giving a lesson. And we think God's happy, that's all we got to do, let's go home. Are we bringing forth fruit for the Master by doing that? I'm not saying taking the Lord's Supper isn't important. It is important. Giving a lesson is important. But that's just the worship service. Maybe we got a little edification. Maybe we got a little evangelism accomplished. Maybe a little Christian growth. But there's more to the work of the church than that. And if we're satisfied with just this, maybe we will bring forth a little fruit for the Master. But frankly, I'm not interested in bringing forth little fruit for the Master. I want to bring forth a lot of fruit for the Master. If we're not interested in bringing forth a large profit for Jesus, or if we just want to do the smallest amount of work necessary, what does that say about us? What does that say about our appreciation for what Christ did for us? Are we saying, Christ, I appreciate you so much for all that you did for me, and Christ turns around and says, well, would you do this for me? No, I'm not interested. I'm busy. I got a lot of stuff to do. Not really interested. But you should be happy, Christ, because we kept the lights on, we had the Lord's Supper, and somebody gave a lesson, and then we went home. Can churches tread water? I think they possibly can. What are you working for as an individual? We'll ask the same question. Where are you going? We ask the question, where are we going? What about you? Where are you going? One thing I've learned in life is I can't control everybody around me. I gave that up years ago. The only person I can control sometimes is myself. And I know that while we look at the parables of Judgment Day, eventually it's going to come down to individuals standing before Jesus and answering for what they did or didn't do. And therefore, I can encourage, I can edify, I can do whatever, but I'm got to answer for me. So I've got to ask this question about me individually. Where am I going? If I can't answer where I'm going, then guess what? I'm probably just treading water. I'm speaking spiritually, of course, here now. Where am I going spiritually? If I say, I don't know, well, you're probably not going anywhere. That's right. You're treading water. Do you have any goals? What are you working for? How do you hope to grow as a Christian? How do you hope to work for God? How do you hope to bring forth fruit for the Master? What's your end goal? Do you have any goals? If you don't have any goals, that may be a clue right there that you're not going in any particular direction. And if you're not going in any particular direction, you're treading water. What are you working for? That's a challenging question I ask you. What are you working for? Let's look at it another way. If I had a fill-in-the-blank question, here it is. Not really a question, it's a sentence. Fill-in-the-blank sentence. My life is about blank. What would you put in there? Whatever you put in that blank, my life is about blank, that's what you're working for. See, I know as a human, our gut reaction is, well, of course my life's about a Christian. You know what I mean? That's the gut reaction. What's your life about? Being a Christian and following Christ. Okay. What are you doing about it? Now, I'm obviously not trying to tell you you got to quit your job and you can't do anything but, evangelize the gospel. It's not what I'm saying. You know that. But if I say my life is about being a Christian and going to heaven, then I would hope that idea and that goal would be what I actually work on and work toward as the week goes on. Right? You understand how goals work. You set the goal, and now you got to do all these different little baby steps and pieces of work to get to it. You don't just wake up in the morning and say, oh, I'm a world-renowned author. Well, maybe that was your goal, but you had a whole lot of baby steps and work to get up to that point. Well, if I say my life is about being the best Christian I can be and bringing forth fruit for the Master, well, every day you got to look at your work and your life and your prayers, and you got to say, what am I doing to work toward that goal? If I have the goal of being a world-renowned author and I never start taking those baby steps of writing and researching and rewriting and editing, I just keep saying, well, one day I'm going to be a world-renowned author. Well, what are you doing about it? Well, I don't do anything about it. I just say that one day I'm going to be a world-renowned author. Well, don't expect me to ask for your autograph anytime soon, because I'm pretty sure you'll never be a world-renowned author. Well, I'm a Christian, and my life is about serving Christ and being faithful and going to heaven. That's my main goal. Great. What are you doing about it every day? Is it what you think about, what you talk about, what you pray about, what you work on? If I get to the end of the week and I can't see any progress, guess what? I'm just treading water. And that goal of being a Christian and bringing forth fruit to the Master is just like the world-renowned author. It's a great idea, but it's never going to come to fruition. And the next thing you know, time will run out and the Master will come back and say, where's my interest? I gave you these things. What have you done with them? And if all you can say is, here's your stuff back, he's going to say, that's not good enough. That's not going to cut it. I didn't give you talent and time and energy and money in order to just hand it back to me on Judgment Day. I expected you to do something with it. And I expected you to bring forth fruit. My life is about blank. I don't know about you, but I probably need to think about that every week, maybe even every day, just as a reminder. What's the most important thing in my life, and am I doing anything about achieving that goal? In 2 Kings chapter 20, we read about King Hezekiah. 2 Kings chapter 20. Hezekiah was sick unto death. In 2 Kings 20, starting in verse 1. And the prophet Isaiah the son of Amoz came to him and said unto him, Thus saith the Lord, Set thine house in order, for thou shalt die and not live. Then he turned his face to the wall and prayed unto the Lord, saying, I beseech thee, O Lord, remember now how I have walked before thee in truth and with a perfect heart, and have done that which is good in thy sight. And Hezekiah wept sore. And it came to pass, afore Isaiah was gone into the middle of the court, that the word of the Lord came to him, saying, Turn again and tell Hezekiah, the captain of my people, Thus saith the Lord, the God of David thy father, I have heard thy prayer, I have seen thy tears. Behold, I will heal thee. On the third day thou shalt go up into the house of the Lord, and I will add unto thy days 15 years. Now that's what I wanted to get to. King Hezekiah was told, you've got 15 years to live. Most of us don't get that type of information. Anything that specific, right? But what if God had spoken to you and said, you've got 15 years to live? What would you do with the time? What if you had less than 15 years? What if you didn't know how long you had? How would that affect how you live? See, here's something interesting that I may have thought about. When we give the invitation to say, obey the gospel, we often may say, we don't know how long we have to live. Why not obey the gospel and obey the Lord today? Well, if that's the true about obeying a gospel, could we not say the same thing to Christians regarding working for God? You don't know how long you have to work for God. So why not work for God today? Is it really any different? You may have 15 years. You may have 30 years. I don't know. But shouldn't the fact that we don't know make it even more urgent? I've got things I want to accomplish for God before I die. I don't know if I will. But that's why I'm working on them now. Because I don't know if I'm going to have time. If God's gracious enough to give me the time, I'm going to get them done. But if He doesn't, then at least I'll go out trying. At least maybe I'll be able to bring forth a little fruit. Maybe I won't be able to bring forth as much as I would have liked, but maybe I'll bring forth what I can. And at least I can stand before God and say, I did something with what you gave me. I didn't just return back to you what you gave me. 2 Peter 3 says, the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in which the heavens shall pass away with a great noise. The elements shall melt with fervent heat. The earth also and the works that are therein shall be burned up. Now, if we know that's going to happen, seeing then that all these things shall be dissolved, what manner of persons ought ye to be in all holy conversation and godliness? You know everything's limited. You know time's running out. Yes, it's not the most fun topic to talk about, but you got to face it. What are you doing with the time that you have? What are you working for? What's your goal? What are you pushing forward for? You know, Jesus said, lay not up for yourselves treasures on earth. Well, that's great, but I ask the question, and I think we hear that sometimes, and of course it says to our mind, well, of course I'm going to lay up treasure in heaven. Of course I'm going to lay up treasure in heaven. I want to know, how do I lay up treasure in heaven? I don't want it to be so vague to be like, well, of course I should lay up treasure in heaven. I want to know, how do I lay up treasure in heaven? How do I do it? Because if my life is supposed to be about, fill in the blank, laying up treasure in heaven, I want to know how to do it. Well, I found some verses. Matthew 19:21. If you would be perfect, go sell what you have, give to the poor, and thou shalt have treasure in heaven. He was telling someone, forget about the material things and help your fellow man. And apparently, that's one way to lay up treasure in heaven. And then Luke chapter 12 says, sell all that you have and give alms. Provide yourselves bag which wax not old, a treasure in the heavens that faileth not. Sell what you have. Give to others. Why? Because once again, it's not about what you can heap up on the earth. It's about what you can do for others. Hebrews 11:26, talking about Moses, esteeming the reproach of Christ greater riches than the treasures in Egypt. What kind of treasure was Moses looking for? Treasure in heaven. How did he get it? By being persecuted and ridiculed for believing in God and following Him. How do I lay up treasure in heaven? By obeying God no matter what the world says. Are you noticing the pattern here? Hebrews 10, for ye had compassion of me and my bonds, and took joyfully the spoiling of your goods, knowing in yourselves that ye have in heaven a better and enduring substance. Cast not away therefore your confidence, which hath great recompense of reward. How do I lay up treasure in heaven? By living for Christ here on earth. I know our end goal for all of us is really heaven. And that's how you lay up treasure. You say, I want to lay up treasure in heaven because that's my end goal. Well, that's the best end goal you can have. But if you don't work on that goal, it's never going to be accomplished. If you don't live for Christ today, it's not going to be accomplished. Do you see? Goals are great because they tell us where we're going. But then once we set the goals, now we actually have to work to make sure they're accomplished. Do you have any goals? What are you working for? Are your goals related to things of the earth? I want a better career. I want a better house. I want a better car. I'm not saying you can't have those things. It's not a sin to have a better car, a better house, etc. But is that what your life is about? My life is about blank. And of course you'd say, no, my life is about being a Christian. Let me see your diary. Let me see what you work on every day. Let me see what you're thinking about. Let me see the progress. You say you want to be a Christian, you want to bring forth fruit to the Master. Let's see what you're working on every day. And of course, you don't have to show me, and you don't have to show God either, because He already knows. You can fill in that blank with whatever you want. My life is about whatever. God knows what your life is about. What are you working for? Are your goals related to things on earth or things in heaven? Are you interested in making a profit for the Master? If the answer is yes, that's great. But then the next question is very simple. What are you doing about it? God gave you today. Tomorrow is not promised. So every day all you can say is, I have today. That's it. And then, of course, the next question is, what am I going to do with it?
If you would like a free Bible correspondence course, then write us at Truth for the World, P.O. Box 241, Bethel Springs, Tennessee, 38315, the United States of America. Or visit us online at truthfortheworld.org.
Paul said, I have planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the increase. Truth for the World is committed to sowing the seed as much as we can. Our Bible teaching goes on day and night and reaches into countries around the world. Students take correspondence courses, listen to our radio programs, watch our videos, and register at our Bible college. We're blessed to be able to be doing so much, but we can't do it alone. If you're a member of the Church of Christ, can you help us? Any prayers and financial support are welcomed. Join us. If we do our part, God will surely do His.